Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, gather in close and listen with an open heart today. When someone approaches the world with a deep sense of curiosity, there's an energy about them that is difficult to overlook. They live as if every day is an opportunity to discover something new, and that mindset shapes the way they move through life. It's not just about gathering facts or accumulating knowledge for its own sake. It's about cultivating a genuine hunger to understand people, ideas, cultures, and experiences at a deeper level. They pay attention to the details that most would skim past, ask questions that encourage deeper thought, and stay engaged long after others have lost interest. This openness signals to everyone around them that they are truly present, truly invested, and truly willing to grow. That is a powerful force that naturally draws people in. This kind of curiosity shines through most clearly in the way they listen. They don't listen just to wait for their own turn to speak, nor do they quickly jump to conclusions. Instead, they listen as if they're trying to discover a new landscape, allowing someone's words to sink in and reveal new layers of meaning. This kind of attention is rare and magnetic because it makes the person speaking feel respected, acknowledged, and seen in a way that's increasingly hard to find. They make people feel like their stories matter simply by being fully present and unhurried. This depth of attention stems directly from that underlying curiosity, a quiet drive to explore what lies beneath the surface rather than settle for whatever is most obvious or convenient. And this way of moving through the world doesn't end with conversations. A truly curious person approaches their work, their creative pursuits, and their personal goals with a similar openness. When they face a challenge, they don't shut down at the first sign of difficulty. They lean into the unknown with the assumption that there is something to discover there too. This transforms obstacles into opportunities for learning. Even their mistakes take on a different tone because they see them less as failures and more as valuable data points along the way. Other people admire this attitude because it frees everyone involved from the fear of being wrong and invites them into the process of exploring together. Curiosity also means they rarely accept easy answers. They appreciate that the most meaningful ideas usually require patience and a willingness to look again, to go one layer deeper. That can take the form of reading widely outside of their immediate interests, immersing themselves in new disciplines, or seeking out viewpoints very different from their own. This openness to diverse perspectives becomes a key part of who they are because it broadens their understanding of the world. And that broad understanding often means they see connections that others might overlook, connections between seemingly unrelated fields, between different kinds of people, between their own passions and those of someone they just met. These surprising connections are often the source of new ideas, new collaborations, new solutions to old problems. That kind of expansive thinking doesn't happen overnight. It grows because they make a habit of wondering aloud, of taking time to reflect, of allowing themselves to be intrigued by the unfamiliar rather than turning away. Curiosity requires patience and a sense of humility too, the understanding that they don't already have all the answers, that they never will, and that this is a good thing. That humility is precisely what makes them so approachable. People can sense that they're not driven by ego or the need to prove they're right. They're driven by a sincere interest in the people they meet and the world they inhabit. And because they continually nurture this interest, they seem to radiate a certain vitality. They grow richer and deeper over time, never becoming stuck or cynical, and that ongoing sense of discovery is inspiring. It reminds everyone they encounter that life can always surprise you if you stay open to it. It's not that they're necessarily the most talented or most experienced in the room, but they do stand out because they make everyone else feel more curious too, more alive to the possibility. Around them, there is a quiet strength that emerges in people who are guided by their values rather than by the latest trends or fleeting external expectations. It's an inner compass that they trust even when the crowd seems to be moving in a different direction, and this consistency is profoundly appealing. Others can sense that they are not trying to fit in for the sake of it, or chasing after the next big thing just because it's popular. Instead, they make decisions and take actions based on what they believe truly matters, and that commitment shines through in every part of their lives. This gives them a kind of presence that feels steady, grounded, and real, like someone you can count on regardless of what's going on around you. That sense of commitment is especially visible in the small choices they make every day. It's reflected in the way they spend their time, the kinds of conversations they lean into, and the way they treat the people around them, especially when nobody is watching. Even when shortcuts are available or compromises would make life easier, they choose the path that's most in line with their beliefs. That doesn't mean they're rigid or self-righteous. Quite the opposite. They understand that living by one's values often requires flexibility, compassion, and a willingness to reconsider one's assumptions. What it really means is that they take their principles seriously enough to practice them, even when it's inconvenient, even when it would be easier to go along with whatever is most expedient in the moment. This kind of integrity builds deep trust over time because people recognize that they don't change who they are depending on who they're with. They don't say one thing and do another. They don't put on a different face in different settings to impress whoever is in the room. That authenticity creates a sense of safety around them. Others feel they can rely on this person because they show up the same way whether they're in a formal meeting or a casual conversation, whether they're surrounded by supporters or standing alone. And that steady authenticity is especially memorable because it's so rare in a world where so much emphasis is placed on image and perception. By choosing to live this way, they also inspire those around them to reflect on their own priorities. When someone anchors themselves in their values, they seem less shaken by criticism or comparison. They recognize that not everyone will understand or appreciate their choices, and they make their peace with that. They'd rather stay true to themselves than chase approval that doesn't align with who they are. This kind of quiet self-assurance is magnetic because it suggests a deeper freedom. The freedom to live according to an internal standard rather than an ever-shifting set of outside expectations. That freedom often manifests as a calm confidence in their work and relationships. They pursue their goals with a sense of purpose, not because they want to one-up someone else or receive validation, but because their goals matter to them. Even if progress is slow or obstacles arise, they don't give up easily because their motivation isn't rooted in momentary enthusiasm, it's rooted in a deeper commitment. This endurance is inspiring to witness. It's not the kind of energy that burns hot and then fades quickly. It's a steady light that keeps going, often quietly encouraging others just by being visible. And that, too, is what draws people toward them. They recognize that they're in the presence of someone who knows where they stand and why. Even if they don't share every belief or choice, they appreciate the strength it takes to follow one's values so consistently. It reminds them that authenticity is a practice, a choice made every day in countless small ways, and that doing so allows someone to move through the world with a distinctive clarity that cannot be manufactured. It's a kind of leadership that rarely announces itself but can be felt immediately, a calm and trustworthy force that leaves a lasting impression wherever it goes when someone truly listens, not just to respond but to understand. They create a rare and powerful space where other people feel seen in a way they rarely experience. It's a practice that goes far beyond the surface exchange of words. It's an entire way of being present with someone, making them feel like their thoughts and emotions matter, like they don't have to put up a front or compete for attention. People who listen like this seem to have a way of seeing right into the heart of a conversation, of catching the unspoken feelings or fears that hide between the lines. That kind of depth doesn't require grand gestures or constant affirmation. It requires patience, an open heart, and a genuine desire to make room for someone else's reality. That sort of empathy is magnetic because it validates something deep inside us, the need to be acknowledged as we really are. Too often, everyday interactions skim the surface, moving quickly from one topic to another without ever truly landing. But someone who listens with empathy slows the pace. They let silences stretch when they need to. They ask gentle questions that show they want to go deeper. They reflect back what they're hearing so you can feel the resonance of your own words. In those moments, there's an unspoken message being sent. I care enough to give you my full attention, to appreciate where you're coming from without judgment, to honor your experience as it is. That simple practice can change the entire tone of a conversation, making you feel lighter, heard, and respected in a way that stays with you long after you part ways. And it's not just one skill or habit. True empathy is woven into the way they show up every day. They pay attention to small changes in someone's mood or energy, knowing that sometimes what matters most is not what's said, but what's left unsaid. They sense when someone is holding back, or when someone needs a gentle nudge to speak their truth. They recognize that listening is about more than hearing words. It's about being attuned to feelings, noticing the subtle shifts that happen beneath the surface of even the most ordinary conversations. That sensitivity allows them to respond in a way that feels tailored to the moment, with words or simply with their presence. That ability to understand others so completely also means they rarely jump to conclusions. Instead of assuming they already know the full story, they allow the conversation to unfold. They appreciate that everyone's experience is more complex and nuanced than it appears at first glance. This kind of openness requires humility, the willingness to admit that they don't have all the answers, and that someone else's perspective might shift their own. That humility is part of what makes them so approachable. People sense that they can say what they truly mean without worrying that they will be judged or corrected. And that safe emotional space they hold is one of the most unforgettable things about them. In a world where so many interactions feel transactional or rushed, being met with such attentive presence feels like a gift. It reminds people of their own depth and dignity. It often surprises them too, making them realize just how rarely they receive that kind of care in everyday life. That realization stays with them. Even long after the conversation is over, they recall the sense of ease and trust they felt in that person's company. And as someone continues to live with empathy at the center of their relationships, they tend to inspire it in others. Even without realizing it, people around them begin to slow down a little more too, to listen a bit more carefully, to respond with more compassion. That ripple effect is subtle but powerful. It creates connections that feel genuine, not forced or superficial. It reminds everyone involved that we all carry stories worth hearing, and that being listened to can be one of the most profoundly human experiences we can give and receive. This is what makes someone who listens with empathy so unforgettable. They hold the kind of presence that allows others to be fully themselves. And that is a rare and remarkable gift when someone has the courage to show up as themselves without constantly polishing their image or concealing the imperfect parts of their story. They give everyone around them permission to do the same. It's a kind of honesty that feels almost radical in a world that often celebrates perfection and surface-level success. Realness is not something you can manufacture. It's something you grow into by letting go of the fear that your true self might not measure up. That takes more strength than most people realize. It takes the strength to acknowledge your doubts, your struggles, and your mistakes as part of who you are rather than as things to hide or erase. That honesty shines through in everything you do. The way you talk about your experiences, the way you listen to others without judgment, the way you don't feel the need to pretend you have all the answers, and that authenticity is magnetic. People are drawn to someone who is unapologetically real because it makes them feel safe. They recognize that they don't have to put on a show either. In the presence of someone who is comfortable being themselves, they can relax. Conversations deepen, laughter comes easier, connections grow stronger. That ease doesn't come from impressing others or curating a perfect image. It comes from showing up fully, without the need to perform or fit into anyone else's expectations. It tells everyone around you that you respect yourself enough to honor your own story, and that respect naturally extends to them as well. There's a quiet bravery involved in being real, especially when it feels like so much of society rewards the opposite. Vulnerability is rarely easy, especially at first. It requires looking honestly at your own fears and insecurities and deciding not to hide them. But it's exactly that kind of honesty that breaks down walls. It reminds people that they're not alone in feeling uncertain, imperfect, or unfinished. Instead of pushing those feelings aside, someone who embodies realness acknowledges them as part of the process of becoming. That acknowledgement gives everyone in their presence more freedom to be imperfect too, which is a rare and valuable gift. And being real doesn't mean oversharing every detail or dramatizing every setback. It means choosing sincerity over pretense. It means holding to what you believe even if it's not popular. It means admitting when you're learning or when you don't have all the answers. That kind of honesty requires you to let go of the idea that you need to control how you come across to everyone. Instead of looking for validation, you look inward and ask yourself what feels true. That self-trust is palpable, and it's one of the most quietly powerful traits someone can have. This realness also shows up in the way someone navigates relationships. They don't feel the need to compete or to impress at every turn. They appreciate the differences between themselves and the people they care about, because they recognize that authenticity leaves room for everyone to grow. They're quick to celebrate someone else's strengths without feeling diminished by them. That kind of generosity is captivating because it's so clearly rooted in self-acceptance. It's not about putting themselves down or upstaging someone else. It's simply about letting everyone shine in their own way. And this commitment to realness carries into the way they face their goals and dreams too. They don't chase after a version of success that looks good on paper if it feels hollow inside. Instead, they put their energy into the pursuits that matter most to them, knowing that aligning their choices with their true values is more fulfilling in the long run. Even when that path looks uncertain or risky to others, they trust themselves enough to follow it. That trust is inspiring to witness. It reminds everyone watching that we don't need to wait until we have it all figured out before we live honestly. Every imperfect step forward can become part of a larger, meaningful journey if it's grounded in who we truly are. That is what makes someone unforgettable, that quiet, persistent willingness to live as themselves, no matter what the world might say.